Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode here of Weather Exposed. We're talking winter weather today. Already starting to see tweets and posts on Facebook about fantasy winter storms on the GFS on hour 384 and that time of year where these things they're popping up.
Yeah, with 300 likes on it.
Yeah,
That's
gosh,
right. Always.
I saw the other day that took our Poema snowfall graphic of the snow anomaly in December, and it's got like 900 shares now.
It's insane.
What?
Yeah, some guy took it off of Facebook.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Did they at least keep the logo?
He did. He kept the logo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, he kept the logo. I mean, I can't be mad at the guy.
It was called the BAM Poema or BAM.
Yeah, the Poema
Oh.
Bams.
Poema BAMs.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh, man.
So we're talking updated winter stuff today. We ran a Twitter poll on what you guys wanted us to talk about, and so that's what we're going to discuss. Is just kind of what we see with winter and kind of where it's going, and just an update on things because we're kind of in that phase. Everyone's getting kind of antsy. Nathan's got some stuff here that he did some research on the Pacific jet stream. We've got some stuff about the QBO, then just some really kind of technological
Nuts and bolts.
today on kind of the winter. So we got the new JMA data. We got some good stuff to share with you. So if you have questions, tweet us or check out the chat. Did we tweet a link to this?
Yes.
All
Tweet
right.
the link. Tell them what hashtag to use.
The hashtag BAMWX podcast. If you have questions, hashtag BAMWX podcast.
Either way.
Okay. Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess we should start out with there's a lot of talk of always, if it's cold in October, it means a cold winter.
Yeah.
I saw a popular Northeast meteorologist.
Oh boy.
Yeah. He was talking about how when Octobers are torches, that typically it means it's just going to be a hot winter.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ed?
I tell you what, I mean, this whole, I know a lot of people look into a lot of different things about relating the summer and the fall into winter. And from what I've seen, and you guys can comment, I mean, there's really not as much correlation as you think. And, there's another prominent research meteorologist that discusses snow cover in Siberia. And, Judah Cohen, very bright guy. But, these things are evolving. And typically from what I've seen, at least from a energy standpoint, it's actually, I saw a graph on Twitter here this morning where typically a positive AO or less blocking in the high latitudes actually leads to a colder December. So there's a lot of conflicting data with respect to that. And I think it's from a viewership point of view, I think you just got to be careful with what you're looking at and what you're sharing, especially what you're sharing, especially on Facebook where things can catch on like wildfire. So
well, and you can't say winter's going to be bad because there's Eurasian snow cover. I mean, it's not
Right.
1-to-1.
Right. It's certainly a tool in the toolbox, but there are a lot of things. There's a lot of tools for a reason, right? So that's kind of my take.
One of those tools are off, and see you bye.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys can see my screen. Let's go through. Ed, give me a winter that was just gangbusters cold and snow in the Northeast.
Let's try 14-15 should have been pretty cold. Let's try that one.
Okay,
But
so
don't
we want to look at October of 14 and 15. 14, I mean.
Yep.
Yes.
So let's just look at October 2014, and we're just going to go through and show you that there's really no statistical relationship or correlation to this.
No, there isn't.
And so this map is generating. We go to the Earth System Research Laboratory, which is ESRL maps, and we research analogs or historical data. And this gives us a real good idea of, what happened in certain years and certain months in the past that may give us an idea of kind of what the future holds. And well, let me guess, ESRL is down today.
Probably. Yeah, as soon as we need it.
As soon as you need ESRL, they're down.
Yep.
That's kind of, I feel like that's kind of life in general.
we
Oh,
go.
look, there we go.
There we go.
Well, look at that. I mean,
Man,
October was a torch in the Northeast.
the torch everywhere. But here.
So 14 and 15 was cold up there, Ed?
I think so. I get all my years confused. So if I'm wrong, bear with me. It's either 14, 15 or 13, 14. One of them was chilly.
15 February.
I think you're right.
That was the snowiest winter on record. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. My memory's not that bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Look, Nathan knows what he's talking
It's
about.
a-
6
it's a
inches
human
in Boston
analog.
that-
I know Boston got a ton of snow.
Yeah, that is right. That's the year that the Boston had like snow into summer or something like that.
I remember there were snowbanks.
Snow. They ran out of
There were-
room
Yeah.
with all the snow.
Yeah, there were snowbanks in some of the parking lots, in the bigger parking lots.
Yeah.
There was snow until I think May.
Right.
Wow.
I think.
Or maybe
There
even
you go.
early June. It was, there you
Well,
go.
there's your outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, you're -3 to -6.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a big time cold winter.
Yeah. A lot of that cold, I remember, too, came in February.
Right. January.
Yes, it
was
did.
not bad.
Oh, it did.
Mild weather.
Yeah.
February came around mid-month and onward. It was absolutely frigid. I mean,
Yep.
just really cold temperatures.
Backloaded
Yeah.
winter.
For sure. Ed, how does Nathan sound?
Oh, sounds gorgeous as ever. No, he sounds
Isn't he
good.
cute? He's a cute little guy, isn't he?
That's right.
I love him.
Probably the smartest guy in the room now.
Oh man, he's like a human statistical
Yeah.
climatology
I'll tell you what,
machine.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
my brain worked like that.
Guys, we got to get Nathan out of his shell. We work on that a little every day here.
Every week, every day. Yep.
Yeah. Today he was playing putt-putt in the
Ooh,
office.
he's getting out there. Did
Yeah,
he make
he made 2 or 3 shots.
Yeah.
3 actually.
He made
I
3.
think I've seen Kirk take about 25 shots and not make one. So that's
Yeah,
that's
he
something.
struggled.
I'm pretty terrible.
Well,
So I get frustrated.
So we set up this for you guys that want to visualize this. It's just a
boy.
styrofoam cup on a laminate floor with a putter and a golf ball, and then we bet lunch and stuff on it. And Kirk literally has never won,
I don't win.
not once.
Yeah, there's warps in the floor, by the way. So we call it team building.
It is a
Did
the
Tiger
team building
Woods say-
exercise.
Does
Yeah.
Tiger Woods say there's warps on the green when he doesn't make a putt? I don't know. Sounds like
Yeah,
an
it's-
excuse to me.
I would.
It's kind of like when someone sees a snowstorm on hour 384 of the GFS, and then the next run it's not there, and they have to explain, oh, it was a hiccup,
Yeah.
That's
hiccup in the
right.
run.
The GFS
Yep,
runs
of
20
course.
degrees in the front. Seen that a lot lately.
Hey, so we just revealed that October of 14 was warm across the CONUS, and it was very cold winter in the east and
Chilly.
northeast.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at another year. Someone give me another cold winter, Nathan. Besides 13, 14, we all know that was cold.
No, I think 09 and 10 wasn't that a pretty cold winter like that?
Yeah, so let's see what December, January, February looked like in 2009.
But I know.
I don't think you're wrong,
don't think
Nathan.
you're
I think
wrong
that
either.
was like the Snowmageddon years.
I'm pretty sure it was pretty rough.
Oh yeah, I think that might have been either 08 or 09 or 09 10. I
Here
can't
it
remember.
is.
Frigid winter, right?
9 and 10.
Wow.
08 and 09.
So that's CONUS wide cold in that winter. Let's look at the prior October. Okay. Let's see. Here's what I hope it's going to tell us. I hope it's cold. I hope it proves to you there's no correlation in October to the winter.
Yeah, this is all
no.
off the cuff, guys. Just so you know, we're just kind of going with this.
Yeah, I mean, but we just want people to know that everyone's always talking about the Eurasian snow cover in the October pattern.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean shit, really.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, it really doesn't.
Throw
It
a
doesn't
dart.
mean anything. I mean, let's be honest for a
Prove that
second.
You're probably going to prove it here too.
Let's see what this one says.
And Eurasian snow cover is just one of the things that.
Look at that.
Yeah. There you
Spot
go.
on.
Debunked.
Cold.
Like very cold.
So you can have Octobers in the freezer or Octobers in the furnace. Unfortunately,
Yep.
Ed enjoys the heat.
Oh, it's my favorite, man.
McTorcherson.
That's what we call Ed.
Heat miser.
McTorcherson. Oh my God. Let's check old Twitter here, see if we got any questions. Doesn't look like we do right now.
The MWX podcast.
Yeah, ask some
Hashtag.
questions. Ask some questions. So we kind of debunked that whole October correlation. One thing too, you guys remember where you saw that graphic, how the Eurasian snow cover the last few years has lost serious correlation? Have you seen that graphic?
Oh, gee. I
It
have
was on
not.
Twitter. Well, the studies are from Judah Cohen, which I respect the heck out of his work. But every year it's supposed to be a cold winter.
Yeah.
And it gets crazy after a while. But his studies say that the greater the Eurasian snow cover, the greater the chance is that we rumble through winter with a negative Arctic oscillation and we're cold.
Right. Or we have more access to cold air or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
And so that correlation has really started to part ways the last few years.
Right.
And so we see that we're trending above normal in all the snow cover, but it never correlates to a negative AO. And, so that's another thing. I'm going to pull this up on Twitter because he tweeted this the other day. Here is the October Eurasian snow cover extent. And October 17, obviously, is right here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trending in the
Middle.
average.
Average.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah. It'd be interesting if we trend like near the lowest and if we have a lot of snow cover this year.
But for example, take winter of 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And you see how the snow cover was very high.
Yeah.
But look at the winter 15 and 16, how by day 20, 21, we were very close to that.
Yeah.
And winter 15, 16 was absolute heat,
Wow.
blowtorch.
Yeah.
Little snow.
And then even 16, 17,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I
And
mean,
that just-
gosh, you had all this high snow cover.
Yeah.
And it just didn't matter.
Yeah. All it takes is a picked up Pacific jet and you're not going to get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to show that there's so many things, and that's why you got to be careful when you're sharing things wherever you are, because there's so many pieces that go into the puzzle that some, and I'm guilty of it, I think we all are, where you kind of latch on to one variable that might be working well at the time, and as the atmosphere adjusts and changes, it may not work so well. So it really depends on the pattern.
Yep. It does. You got to really, in forecasting, especially seasonally,
Oh yeah.
you have really got to, you can't have an agenda.
No.
Yeah.
Or your agenda is going to get pimped.
Yep.
You know,
And then
Real
you're going to look stupid. So,
it's just like how dang Joe Bastardi.
Yeah.
What was that tweet this morning? He picked out an individual run of the CFS and it was cold. And then he even says, I know this is cherry picking.
Yeah.
But winter has potential to be cold. Doesn't every winter have
It's
potential
winter.
to be
I
cold?
mean, I'd be kind of shocked if it was all warm. I mean, I'd hope it'd be colder. We've got a business.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Every winter has potentially to be snowy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so
I don't know.
gosh, guys. So we're not against cold,
No.
and we're not against winter. In fact, winter's snow is one of the main reasons why I got into.
Right. More
Yeah.
snow, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I love a good snowstorm,
You got to stay objective, though.
but we can't just say it's going to be cold and snow all the time.
Yeah.
It just,
Especially after the last 2 years. There was plenty of potential.
yeah,
Right.
it just doesn't work that way. So this is on my screen right now is the Arctic oscillation forecast, and just in the next 15 days, and it's hovering around neutral, negative, positive. Guys, it's still October.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where the AO's at.
Nope.
Okay.
Right.
Nope.
It just doesn't matter.
And even if you have a negative NAO this time of the year and you get some good high latitude blocking, there's nothing that says that stays the entire winter.
Right.
So that's the toughest thing.
I agree.
Yeah. So when we started doing these podcasts, what we wanted to do is really expose weather, and kind of the truth behind it. And everybody always thinks there's such clear-cut relationships to certain things, and that there isn't. There are so many variables.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do right now is I'm going to pass the mic here to Nathan, and he's going to talk about the Pacific jet stream influence, because that is a huge factor this year, once again, as it was again last year.
Yep.
So the blog's up on the screen. Remember, Nathan, a lot of people are just listening. They don't have a
Right.
visual.
Right.
So talk about that Pacific jet stream. You've got about 5 minutes. Give us a
Yes, and I hope everyone had a chance to read my blog yesterday. I thought it was, some pretty interesting stuff on last winter. The Pacific jet stream threw a major wrench in, I think, every forecast. No one could have predicted it to be as strong as it became. And really, it kind of evolved in November when we had a lot of buildup of cold air over Siberia. And what happened was the North Pacific became a lot cooler as we went through November. Meanwhile, in the Central Pacific, you had waters that were over a degree above normal. So you had this really big thermal gradient, really cold in the North Pacific. Central Pacific was actually pretty warm. So that created a very strong jet stream, a lot stronger than what we would normally see. And that jet stream, well, for one, it pumped in a lot of moisture into the West Coast. You saw California getting all these storm systems last winter. And at the same time, that jet was so strong, it just absolutely basically roaring across the entire United States and pumping in that warm, mild Pacific air. And with those winds in the upper levels being so strong, you weren't getting or allowing really much cold air to, for one, get nudged south, and two, to really get sustained across the area going through the winter, because it just wasn't possible with a jet stream that was so strong across the Pacific. So kind of looked at.
Before you keep going, so you talked about the Pacific jet being really strong and busting that California drought. What do you see this year? Do you see something as significant as last year?
Well, I compared yesterday. So I made a graphic showing a comparison of sea surface temperatures. First, I looked at October last year versus where we are right now. And there's actually a lot of similarities. So last October, it was still warmer than normal in most of the North Pacific. So, it's interesting how in November, we went from warmer than normal waters to significantly colder. And then that set up that big gradient, which set up the really strong jet stream last winter. So overall, there's a lot of similarities as far as like the sea surface temperatures. Now, as far as how much Arctic air buildup we see in parts of Siberia in November, of course, that's to be determined. But, I think there's definitely some potential for, we're entering like a weak La Nina type pattern where we're going to see the specific jet stream coming into the Northwest United States across the northern part of the U.S., bringing a lot of moisture this winter. So, some of the differences that I'm seeing, as far as from last year, obviously we have cooler waters on the west coast of South America versus what we had last year. And I pointed that out. Definitely quite a bit of difference there. But there's still actually a lot of similarities. I mentioned how the Northeast Pacific is slightly cooler than this time last year. In the Northwest Pacific, it's actually a little bit warmer than this time last year. But there's a lot of similarities there. So it's.
So you mentioned here, Nathan, in the Northeast Pacific is somewhat cooler, than what it was last year. And we know last year that jet was just fire hosing into California.
Right.
Do you think that the waters are cooler there now, that could, what do we say, mitigate
Temper
that jet stream a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, you have to think about it. The jet stream was so strong last year, the chances of having another year with a jet stream quite that strong, it's probably not very likely. So I do think since it is a little bit cooler in the Northeast Pacific, you saw last fall was like a degree and a half above normal there. This year, I don't have actual values there, but it's, you have some pockets there where it's a little bit cooler than normal. And then you have some pockets where it's above normal. So, you can make the case that, that could try to temper things a little bit as far as how strong that jet stream is this year. And, it was very unique how that all evolved. And, so hopefully, we'll see how that plays out. But you can see on the forecast, this is from our Poema model, and, it's showing those stronger than normal upper level winds, which is the jet stream coming in from the Pacific Northwest, diving into the Ohio Valley region and into the Northeast. And that continues throughout the winter, especially once you get into February. For one, that tells us it's going to be pumping in a lot of moisture, very active storm track there from the Pacific Northwest right into the central and northern part of the country this winter.
So with this, explain to the listeners what if we have a jet of this magnitude, what do we need in order for there to actually be cold in the United States.
Right. So we know last year, not only did we have a strong Pacific jet stream, which pumped in all that warm, mild air, but also we had the positive phase of the QBO, not much upper level blocking. Just because we're going to be looking at potential for a stronger normal jet stream, that doesn't just automatically mean, okay, it's going to be a mild winter in the US. There's so many factors, so many pieces to the puzzle. I think if we can sustain some some higher latitude blocking up and towards the North Pole in the high latitudes, that could definitely help us, in driving some colder air into the United States and allowing that jet stream configuration. Last year was more like a west to east jet stream where, if we can get some good blocking, what that's going to do with your jet stream, it's going to make it more meridional, as we call it, where you have big dips and rises there, ridges and troughs, I should say. So, we need some good upper level blocking, and that's always kind of a wild card as far as the NAO and the AO. As we mentioned, it's only October. So, those are always wild cards that we don't really know how they're going to pan out until we get closer. But if we can, maintain and some good upper level blocking this year, even with the stronger than normal jet stream, that could allow for some big differences from what we had last year. So, that's something we're going to have to watch as we get closer.
I feel like last year we didn't have very many wave breaks either, or we didn't have like a dominant trough or dominant ridge in the west. So think positive P&A allows that colder air to spill on east. I feel like since we didn't have very many wave breaks across the Pacific, and that's breaking the Pacific jet stream simply, that it was just cooking it the entire winter.
Yeah, it's just
so. And I think this year too, we have a pretty active Western Pacific typhoon season. So you can kind of see that coming up here, where we're going to have a recurving super typhoon. And what that does is it creates a wave break in that Pacific jet. It's going to allow that ridge in the Western United States to really pump up into Canada and to spill that colder air in Canada and Alaska all the way into the eastern parts of the US. So if we can get more of those, and you get a little bit of high latitude blocking setup, and there's your setup for colder versus last year.
So with that being said, as Nathan does a great job of explaining that, let's kind of dive into this. Ed and Kirk, what do you guys give me a breakdown of what we're looking at here, and what kind of what you're thinking? Let's talk about the QBO a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start with the left image. So the left image is what you're looking at, QBO, westerly phase versus an easterly phase. So if you go back to like last year towards more like the right, we were more in like a, what would you say, westerly phase. Westerly positive phase. So there were less opportunities for high latitude blocking or less weakening polar vortex. And so we just didn't have potential for a lot colder air. But watch as we went throughout the whole year, we're kind of doing like a half circle here. We're currently in the bottom left phase, which is we're descending the QBO. We're already negative, and we're potentially continuing to be negative. So in my opinion, that tells me, we may have more stratospheric warming events based on a weaker polar vortex. So it's a better potential for colder air intrusions, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think another important factor here compared to last winter is if you look, and Kirk, you can circle it back near the January 17 area there. Notice how in every single QBO event prior to last season, notice how the circles are very concentric. They're very similar. They're all going around. You see that? Yep. And this past year, last winter, combined with the quote unquote Godzilla El Nino hangover from the prior year, the QBO was very anomalous compared to normal years. Normally we have it's about 18 to 27 months, I believe, is the official definition of a QBO phase. And last year we stayed in that positive phase. And I'm not an expert with respect to the research behind the stratosphere, similar to Sam Lilo, who created these graphics. But it was definitely an anomaly, and that allowed, like Nathan and Kirk and Michael were saying, for less in the way of high latitude blocking. So it was a very anomalous situation. And I think, and Kirk, feel free to chime in, I think we're starting to return back towards what would be considered normal for the QBO phase space. So I think we're heading like Kirk was saying, back towards that easterly
Right.
negative phase.
Yeah.
So let's do something real quick. For those of you that are listening and you can't see, each month the QBO seems to make a linear progression that is equal to the prior month.
Right.
And here's what's important is the QBO is not a linear. It's not a linear relationship to the weather.
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
But it is a tool. So very simply put, starting in June is when we really started to see the QBO this year start to go negative. Okay.
It was tanking fast.
Yeah. And then, so what happened is, sorry, someone just tried calling me. Let me turn my do not disturb on here up. Where is it? There we go. Sorry,
We got
guys.
it. We're good.
All right. So, let's get back to this. What happened? What's going on is that the QBO is descending each month, same as the last month, essentially. So, in August of 17, it was at this point. In September of 17, it's at this point. October at 17, it's this point. So let's say that it moves, for those of you who need a visual, it moves an inch every month to make it simple. Okay. Let's say we forecast it to be here in November.
Mm-hmm.
It moves another inch in December, and then another inch here in January, and then we're here in February, and then we're here in March, roughly. So we are heading into a phase of the QBO where it is a easterly negative QBO. Essentially what that means is that as this QBO is descending, the statistical research supports greater probability of higher latitude blocking, especially in the NAO and AO regions.
Yes.
The reasoning for that is how these stratospheric warming events or weakening events take place during a certain phase of the QBO.
Yes.
So the QBO, just because it's negative, does not mean it's in a favorable phase.
Whether it's descending or plateauing.
Exactly. So right now, ideally, we would say the QBO is on a descent. That works out in our favor.
Yes. And that's
There's
a big if.
Yeah. There's a graph here on the right. And again, for those of you that can't see, we're looking at number of events that were stratospheric warming events that occurred in the phase we believe we're going to be in, which is this E30 down here to the bottom right. Again, Sam Lilo created these on Twitter. Great follow if you guys want to check him out. But we're looking at when these stratospheric warming events occurred. And what's interesting is we look in, let's start with 1st November. We have 1, 2, 3 November stratospheric warmings here in E30. Okay. Then we go to December and we have 1, 2, arguably 3, 4. And then we go to January and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right. But then we only notice there's only 1 in February, right? And there are only technically 2 in March. So there is more statistical probability that the stratosphere, we may witness some kind of polar vortex breakdown earlier on in winter, according to this research.
So a front-loaded cold potential.
Yeah, which will lead us into our next point is the new Japanese data that came in today.
Yeah,
you know,
perfectly can see that.
But before I move on, before we close this up, with this QBO, a couple things need to be put on the record here. This does not guarantee cold.
No.
Because, and Ed, you can touch on this because you and I discussed this last year with the polar vortex being on the other side of the planet.
Yep.
If the polar vortex breaks down and it's over Siberia, it's not going to matter. We're going to get warm.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's, last December, I believe it was December. Correct me if I'm wrong. It got cold. It wasn't, and you don't need, you hear about these true sudden stratospheric warming events where the vortex completely breaks down, splits, and then you get your monster cold.
You see it right there, Ed?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yep.
And in December, we didn't get a complete breakdown. but we did get that weakening. And the way the atmospheric pattern was oriented, that cold was allowed to kind of break off and come into the US. And it really does depend on how the atmosphere is oriented, like Mike said. And I believe there were a few, maybe it was in February, events where it did break down and it weakened, but it went to the other side of the globe, and it was cold in Europe.
Yeah, last year too, wasn't there? There was a lot of potential that we were very close to it splitting, but the cold seemed to be in Europe. I'm pretty sure it was one of the cooler winters we've seen in a while in Europe. And the flip side was we were warm, so it was on the wrong side of the planet.
Exactly. So it really, there are so many factors that go into it. And like Mike said, Sam Lilo is a good follow regarding SSW type stuff in the stratosphere. But it's a very complex phenomenon, just like a lot of long range meteorological tools are. So be careful again with, it's not a one-to-one relationship. So that's the big takeaway.
Yep. So what you're seeing here is I'm going to show you the new Japanese model run. Now the September JMA and the October JMA runs were really significantly different overall.
Yep.
Just looking at the 500 millibar pattern. Okay. Yep. And the main difference I see from this, and you guys can chime in on this, is two things: is this region here, and this region here.
Got it.
Yeah, sure.
So, and what I mean by regions, for those of you that are listening, the southeastern ridge or the western tropical Atlantic, or west of Greenland, just in the Greenland area, Hudson Bay areas, the NAO area.
Yep.
So the old run in September had basically a bunch of low heights and no blocking in the winter forecast.
Very transient.
Yes.
Yep. The new run decided to amp up all kinds of high latitude blocking, specifically in the NAO region. And then it also decided to weaken that southeast ridge.
Yeah.
Nathan, Nathan, in your research, did you find anything where the Pacific jet was related to the southeast ridge?
That's a really good question.
I just wonder if the strength of it may dictate, or the orientation would dictate the strength of the southeast ridge.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely would come into play with that. If that southeast ridge is stronger, we're likely going with, a stronger jet strength.
Yeah, wouldn't that make sense, guys? If we're pumping in a strong Pacific jet,
absolutely,
we're gonna crank up the southeast ridge.
It's almost a direct relationship. So, or if you reorient it or change the intensity of it, you get a weaker southeast ridge, and it's easier for that colder air to shift south a little bit.
Right.
So.
And I think another really important point that we actually mentioned this in the winter seminar. I think it's important that we need to track the subsurface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, because that's going to dictate. I don't know if you have a graphic handy. I personally don't, but those values in the equatorial Pacific will pretty much dictate the Hadley cell out in the mid latitudes, and that will ultimately drive that Pacific jet. So there's so many little factors, and I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face, but there's so many things that can kind of tweak the overall regime of things. And I think this could be a really good that right there. Yep, exactly.
So look how cold it is, Ed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that could definitely play into that Hadley cell directly.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I don't know if you have this graphic handy on the CPC page, the time series and the anomaly, and it shows that last year, even though for you guys listening, last year we had a similar cool stretch in the equatorial Pacific, but it decided to kind of get washed out due to those. I believe there were some pretty decent westerly wind bursts last year that kind of stirred up that water, and that plays in directly with what Nathan was talking about. And that type of relationship and that type of activity is so crucial. And that's kind of the under the hood analysis that we look at and all meteorologists look at to make our forecast. So that's something that's definitely, in my opinion, pretty interesting and important. Oh, there we go. Yep. Nice graphic there. Yep.
Yeah. So what Ed's saying is, on the surface, it looked like La Nina, but in the background, some of the key drivers were missing.
Well, we were beaten at home all winter where everyone was like, but it's Nina. We're like, but that background of the atmosphere was not Nina. So,
and then
there's a huge difference there.
Right. And that all of that information, then we can transpose on top of the MJO. And I remember last year, and I know Mike knows all about this one. Last, I believe it was January, we had a phase 8 MJO and everybody's like, oh my God, it's going to be so cold. Holy crap. And needless to say, that didn't work out thanks to exactly what Nathan was saying.
Yeah, the Pacific jet stream. I mean, you can even have a period where their models are advertising lower heights. It does not mean a lot of cold.
It does not.
Yes.
Case in point there, because we had some lower heights, we just never got cold.
Yep.
So that's
And
a
it's
risk
all
too.
Yep. Good stuff.
Guys, these are things, on TV, your local TV weather guy's not going to talk about this stuff.
No.
They're not going to talk about this on your free weather app or the free CPC outlook that you get from NOAA, or the Farmer's Almanac. Okay.
Who knows what that's based on?
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is
cool.
You're not going to get this kind of research and analysis unless you're with a private weather firm that's looking into this stuff.
No, daily.
So think back real quick. We talked about the QBO and its descent and how it's favorable for a possibly front-loaded cold winter.
Yep.
All right. I think November, December, January has potential to be cold.
Yeah. And snowy.
Yeah. So let's look at real quick the breakdown.
Yep.
Here's December and here's January. December on the JMA featured a really aggressive look with cold intruding into about 70% of the United States. And it had a pretty stark contrast of this quote unquote 0 degree isotherm, where you would get that rain snow line, that kind of that gradient of the storm track. It was well down into the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and in the interior Northeast.
Yeah.
And then you look over here into January, and it too was also very impressive with a very strong thermal gradient going right through the I-70 corridor, up and through the interior Northeast and out through, Iowa and Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the new JMA today was would be gangbusters in the snow department.
Sure.
Because the colder you are and the more access you have to moisture, it's just a translation to a lot more snow. Because even if you have above normal rainfall or precipitation, that does not translate to above normal snow.
No.
It's all about temperatures. Yeah. Last year, case in
Yeah. Yeah.
So these graphics you see, these are from meteorologist Ben Knoll.
Yes.
You can follow him on Twitter at Ben Knoll Weather.
great follow.
That's a great follow as well. Good information. But note here the old run versus the new run. The old run still had a precipitation focus on the Ohio Valley. The new run shifted the most active part of the storm track really kind of into the southern U.S. And this would put if you're looking for a snow jackpot, in the northern end of that, you're looking somewhere probably in here. Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Great Lakes area, and then the interior Northeast.
Yep. And it's important to note that while these are great tools and everything, this time last year, pardon my French, but the JMA shit the bed pretty bad.
Yeah,
it
did. It really did.
But this is great information that we use to kind of add on to our research and all this stuff. So it's not something we're going to ignore, whether it's cold, warm, snowy, rainy, whatever. It's definitely good information.
Yep. And that's the thing is we can tell you about the trends and what our research is showing. that's as good as it's going to be able to get. I mean,
Yeah,
you're not.
you can't foresee the future.
There's not a crystal ball here.
No.
Right.
Well, and what we try to do too is we use models to relate back to our research, and then not the other way around, because I think that's important too. Is we use what we feel is right, not what is available.
Right.
So that's a big difference.
So real quick, we talked about that QBO.
Yeah.
And we'll just look at what it means to be negative. In the correlation to that. December, January.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically just a linear correlation of, what it means.
Yeah.
And this is, simply put, really supports a much lower than normal heights from the Midwest into the Northeast. And so, that has a lot of weight on our winter outlook, is that we're kind of banking on that, but make no mistake, our winter outlook is not in the freezer either.
It's not.
Nope.
We're not going gangbuster cold here by any means.
Yeah, it's not that cold.
No.
I'll show you what it is.
And that's important because, while research or while data might say one thing, we're putting so many things into our forecast, and as much as you may not want to think about it, last year is at least it's on my mind, just because, everything's pretty similar, relatively speaking.
We had the potential last year until the Pacific Jet came along and torched everything. So and you have to be cognizant of the same result.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, it's not hot either. I mean, there's certainly some colder risks too.
Right.
So here's what I want to do next. I'm going to pass the mic between you guys and myself. And if you had to make changes to the winter forecast right now, Nathan, I want you to first start and tell me where your changes would be.
Well, I think our forecast looks really good. My kind of gut. Clearly, what you can see here, we have a strong temperature gradient this winter. We're expecting a lot colder to the north and warmer to the south, and you can make the case that we're going to have a very active storm track, because those storms are going to ride where we have those big gradients in the temperature to really feed a lot of storm systems coming in throughout the winter. Now, if anything, I think we could possibly expand the cold a little bit, as we, just kind of my gut tells me that there's a chance we might be able to make that blue go down just a little bit further off to the south into parts of the Ohio Valley, maybe even nudging towards the Northeast as well. We're going to have to gauge the strength of that Southeast ridge this winter, but especially with some of that upper level blocking possibly starting to show up, saw on the JMA there, might be able to expand that cold just a little bit. So if I were to make any changes, I might expand that below normal just a little bit further south.
Okay.
But all right.
So Nathan says it's going to get colder. All right.
Yeah. I'm gonna say it will get colder into the Ohio Valley as well, and I got a couple of reasons. So if the easterly bursts along the equatorial Pacific, which have just lingered all summer, and we're seeing trends that may weaken a bit and allow a relaxation of those easterlies, that could tell us the background stayed a little bit more neutral instead of a gangbuster La Nina like winter. We could see a relax in the southeast ridge a little bit. We get that negative QBO to continue to descend. We get a little bit more high latitude blocking, and that will result in pulling those colder anomalies down to Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, maybe even parts of Missouri and Kentucky a little bit more. So I think it would result with the newest data a little bit weaker of a southeast ridge and a little bit tug further south of that cold, in my opinion.
Sure. Yep.
Ed Valley, what do you think?
Me. Okay. I really liked what Kirk and Nathan are saying there. I agree that I think the I think the lightest blue can definitely come farther south, maybe to I-70 or so. But I also think that the gradient between the warm and the cold is going to be a little tighter. And that the problem with the seasonal forecast is it's very difficult.
What we have.
What'd you say?
Tighter than what we have.
Kind of like what we have there. Yeah.
Okay.
And okay. I think what's hard is, like one of you guys was saying that, we're going to have this active storm track along the temp gradient, right? And the thing that we always run into is it's very difficult to project if it storm tracks through Des Moines or through Indianapolis, that'll have a huge impact on the weather in Chicago. And it'll pump up warmth ahead of it, and then cold will drill in behind it. So it's, in my opinion, I think our forecast is pretty good. I really wouldn't make too many changes, but if I had to,
no major changes.
Right. If I had a gun to my head, I would probably tighten that gradient up a little bit and allow for some colder risks I-70 northward. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Fair.
Okay. So I personally would have been I wouldn't have changed at camp.
Yeah.
I think where we are, everything these guys are saying, I agree with 100%. Here's my take and my concern is a direct repeat of last year.
Yeah.
It always looms.
And the only reason I have that concern is I'm just watching this Pacific jet stream right now. That to me is a scary thing. And
it's ramping up.
Yeah.
And I think in order to get some really good cold this year, we've got to disrupt that polar vortex.
Yep.
That's a big must. Yeah.
And it's got to be on the right side of the planet.
That's what they want.
So, with that being said, if I had to pick the money area for snow, if I thought hey, where's the most snow in relevance to normal gonna fall? I'm gonna tell you where that would be right now. Let me pull up my little map here because we do have it's not on there. Damn it.
I'm curious,
okay.
I'm curious to know your thoughts because I have some thoughts as well. So we can
Let me find my.
Bring up the preset.
Yeah, here's my precip. So I'll show you where I think the heaviest snow falls this winter.
Yep.
As of right now. That's open.
October 18th.
It's open for debate. I'm going to highlight it. But I'm going to say the heaviest snow starts between Kansas City and Des Moines, goes in through Chicago and Grand Rapids, and out through the Great Lakes in the extreme northwestern interior northeast. I think there's a very sharp gradient along Interstate 70 through St. Louis and back to Kansas City. Inside here, places like Chicago, Fort Wayne, Detroit, Cleveland, Des Moines, South Bend. I think this is the jackpot area for snow this season.
Makes sense.
So if you can see my highlight, if you can't see it, that's the area that I think we're looking at right now. Ed, what were you thinking?
Yeah, pretty similar to that, excuse me. Last year is going to stick out in my mind until I'm proven otherwise. So I would probably have gone a little bit farther north, maybe up to Minneapolis and then rounded out somewhere near Peoria and then back up towards like Fort Wayne. Yeah, something like that. And then up towards the lakes and into the interior northeast as well. Yeah. I think, I don't know if we have any listeners in the northeast or the east or anybody who likes to ski. I think this year could be quite good for the northern New England ski areas, which they haven't really had a good snow year in a while. Yep, somewhere in there. Yep. So that's something that I'm thinking about. I think also just scoping it out a little bit. I think the mountains of the Rockies into the Northwest, I think the Cascades are going to do really well. Just based on everything we're seeing. I know last year, obviously California, the Sierra Nevada up into the Cascades had a really good year as well. Think that could happen again, perhaps.
Yeah. That's the difference too. Just to say real quick is 100 miles could be for Chicago. Could be the difference between 10 inches and 45 inches.
Yeah.
I mean, just where that storm track goes, access to cold air.
Yep.
It is not big at all.
Yeah, and that's why I'm personally not a huge fan of vendors spitting out like official snowfall amounts, because like you just said, I mean, it's so tough to pinpoint. We could know 3, 4, 5 weeks in advance that there's going to be a pretty damn big storm coming through the Ohio Valley, but is it going to be rain in Indianapolis or is it going to be 8 inches of snow? It's very difficult to really nail down those predictions.
Yeah, and if I could add here, that reminds me of the winter of 2013 and 14. Indy had over 50 inches of snow that winter. Snowiest December through February that's been recorded. But, you go in southern parts of Indiana, say about 100 miles south around Evansville and those areas, they only had about 18 inches or so, 20 inches of snow that winter. So there was a huge difference in the snow totals that
There was
winter.
like 85 in Fort Wayne.
Right. So you had a ton of, basically the snow just kept hitting the same areas over and over again. You had that mean storm track coming through. In areas just off to the south, much lower snow. So that's why it's so tough to ever like really forecast snow totals for the winter, because you can have big time differences in just a really small area from say Indy to Evansville. So it's
There you go.
Here you go, little fella.
Oh boy.
Some butthurt cream for you.
Yeah.
Little preparation aid for you.
Somebody's not going to get snow, and they're going to get all pissed off.
Yeah.
It's funny. I know somebody who moved from Portland, Oregon to Chicago. It was 2 years ago because he was tired of the weather in Portland. He loves winter, he loves snow. So he decided to move to Chicago. And since he's lived there, he hasn't seen hardly any snow. And he's really disappointed. So I think Chicago, if I was to pick any city, I would just about say Chicago is in a really good spot this year. Doesn't mean they will, but everything we're looking at, I would say they have a really good potential this year.
Yeah. I agree.
We do have, in case anyone's wondering, we have an unlimited supply of butthurt cream here. And we can assure you that we do not give two shits if you did not get your snow this winter.
No.
I can promise
your
you
rain
that.
this summer.
We do not care.
Yeah, or your rain.
So,
I don't control the weather. I just give it.
It's like, listen, guys, I mean, so
That's just
frustrating.
reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, real quick, we're going to sum it up.
Yeah, summer up.
What's your money city? What's the best city for snow this year?
For snow?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say
This is a guess.
I'm saying Chicago. They're
Okay,
in a really good
Kirk.
I'm
spot.
going to say Chicago. I'm going to say like Madison, Wisconsin.
Ooh. Ed?
I'm gonna say Davenport, Iowa.
Okay.
We got a nice
All
little radius there.
Little
Yeah.
triangle. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you got?
I'm going to
Mikey?
say upstate New York near the lakes.
Oh, see,
You just don't
Buffalo.
Straight Buffalo, huh?
I was gonna say that. I'm gonna pick Redfield, New York, the one on the Tug Hill, 100 inches.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's true too. With you got to think lake effect season real quick too.
Yeah,
I think lake effect's going to be nuts this year.
It's gonna be gangbusters. Those waters are so damn warm.
Warmer than normal waters. We had
Yeah.
with all the heat we had the past month. That's really allowed the lake waters to be well above normal.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I don't know if we have our November forecast visible anywhere, but if you look at our November forecast, in my opinion, especially like we're actually going to start seeing it. I think later this or maybe next week. Yeah, about 6-7 days from now, we're going to start getting these little troughs coming in. And if you look at some of the model data, and I know some of you guys listening certainly will do that. There's definitely some snow coming already for especially the upslope areas of the Appalachians in like West Virginia, that type of area. And as we start getting these troughs moving in, that's kind of what I'm seeing. I'm seeing when these troughs come in, the waters are so warm, you're going to start getting these colder air masses coming in. It's going to start in the higher elevations and slowly work its way down as the cooler air comes in. And from there, I mean, who knows? I think the potential in November, even maybe it's later in November. I don't know. I think the potential is there, even in, off of Lake Michigan and off of especially Superior up that way. Once you start getting these troughs coming in, you got to be on the lookout for some white stuff.
White stuff.
Like
So take that as you may, I guess, but you know what I mean.
I got weird real quick. Kirk wants some.
Buffalo had a big lake effect snow event.
A lot of white stuff in Buffalo.
Oh yeah, back in 06.
Yeah.
They like the
It was
white
actually October 12th and 13th.
Yep,
It was
I remember that.
super early in the season.
Didn't they
I don't know
have
if anybody watching has ever lived in an area or anything, but obviously they get a ton of snow from the lakes in the winter. And, it was early October that year and they got snow. And it was a surprise because the forecasters there thought it would be rain, but a unique situation set up where it was just cold enough to get wet snow and ended up getting, I think, 20 inches or something.
that happened? I
October
think
12th and 13th.
I think Ed was in charge of that forecast.
Really?
Yeah.
I was back in 06. The leaves on the trees. Oh, wait, he was in college. Oh, wait, he was
Oh man. All right. quick check. If we had to look at the last 5 CFS V2 runs, looks a lot like the JMA that came in today,
It does.
with the exception of not that much blocking.
Yeah.
Temperatures, the coldest confined to the northern tier.
Not bad.
Not a bad look.
Not terrible.
Yeah.
You're slightly warmer though than normal for about 75% of the CONUS,
Sure.
if that run's correct. The latest run that's in, a little bit colder, and obviously a very active storm track right through
I-70.
Des Moines, Peoria,
Yeah.
Chicago, Detroit area.
I felt pretty good about my choice there.
Yeah. So Kirk's gonna rub himself. Here we go. So, guys, that's gonna about wrap it up. Just remember, if you see a snowstorm at hour 380 or 330, even hour 240, let's be careful.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Trust your source.
That's right.
Anybody have any closing remarks?
Yeah. Tell them where they can find our service.
BAMWX.com.
That's right.
Just contact us if you're interested. Daily, multiple times per day updates.
On-call service.
Yep.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Energy, ag, winter, your landscape,
Yep.
snow removal. Come on
Yep.
down.
When it's snowing, we're up. If it's 3 a.m. and there's a snowstorm, we're here.
Red
So
Bull.
Red Bull and frozen pizza.
That's all I've
What's
got.
your favorite frozen pizza?
Frozen pizza.
Stuffed crust,
Go
without a doubt.
Yeah, but what brand?
Oh, DiGiorno. It's not delivery. It's DiGiorno.
Man,
Red Bear. is not
DiGiorno
too bad.
used to. I feel like it's gone downhill a little bit.
That's the only pizza
Maybe a
I
little
buy. I
pricier.
usually buy store brand if we're being honest.
Yeah,
Whatever.
that's fine, Ed.
Can't go wrong with a good sausage.
Whoa.
Cheese.
Italian sausage.
On that
Right.
note,
Yeah, Nathan's. Yeah.
it's getting a little
So
spicy.
good.
Ooh.
I like the little Tostinos, little 99-cent things.
Oh yeah.
That's what I like.
It's the little things in life.
That's right. Oh,
Jesus.
yeah. The pizza rolls are phenomenal.
Oh, man.
Totinos.
The all meat
Had
ones.
some of those yesterday actually.
Yeah. A little bit of ranch.
Haven't tried ranch, but
Come on, man. You haven't lived.
What? Oh my God.
So hang on a second. You've never had ranch or just not on
okay, yeah. Let me clarify.
Okay.
I've had ranch.
Clarify.
I've lived a little bit. I've had ranch on my salad, but no, not on pizza rolls.
What about on like your buffalo wings? Come on.
that? Ooh.
Vito's.
Oh man. All right, guys. It's been a great conversation
Yeah.
It's been fun.
from all of us here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Weather Exposed. Y'all have a wonderful week. And if you have ideas for next Wednesday, tweet them to us. #BAMWX podcast. Have a great week. See you. Bye.
We'll be seeing you.